Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Operations Committee here at Baltimore City Public Schools. Want to welcome everybody in our audience in the public community. Well, what I would like to say to the community before we get started, if we move a little bit too fast and you have questions, feel free to, if you have the opportunity, to record our meeting so that if you have questions later, you might want to send your questions in and we can answer some of your questions. So good morning, and I would like for we have our commissioners here. Introduce yourself.
Commissioner Richardson.
Andy Frank.
Okay, thank you. And I would like for our presenters to give their name so that our public can know exactly who they are. And we could get started. We're going to start off with sustainability report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning. I'm Joanna P. Sunier. I'm our Green Schools Coordinator for Baltimore City Public Schools. And I would actually like to start with a short video that our communications department made about one of our sixth grade environmental education experiences.
Hey guys, it's Bass and Saul. And right now, we're here at the National Aquarium where students are taking part in a multi-lesson experience called What Lives in the Harbor. It's tied to the sixth grade science curriculum and it's engaging students across the city. Let's investigate.
And we have a salinity of 32 to 36 ppt. Can I survive? Caught another one. It's animals in there.
We're going to find out, hopefully.
Water is the area of land over which water drains to the lowest point.
Today we have City Springs Elementary Middle School out here, and they get to test the water quality in the Baltimore Harbor. We look at dissolved oxygen, salinity, pH, turbidity, and we also look at harbor color.
I felt like this program would be a great experience for the kids that live in this neighborhood. They live in walking distance of the Inner Harbor, and they didn't realize that the Inner Harbor plays a great part in the water quality that we have in Baltimore City.
How many meters did you drop this under? So the water is high turbidity, right?
Basically, turbidity is measuring how dirty or murky the water is, and they can determine, okay, I see that this type of animal lives here. It can live in high turbidity or it can live in low turbidity. So it shows them that there's something is in the water, there's a reason for everything.
After we do that, we come up with a hypothesis about what animals may be able to live in a harbor based on its current state.
Some animals can live in here, some animals can't because of the turbidity. Because if the turbidity is high, like too high, then some animals can't live in here.
Sometimes we see a lot of jellies in the harbor. We get a lot of jellies out here, especially in the summer. And the way we relate that is that jellies are reverse indicator species. They're able to exist even when there's like low levels of oxygen. They can still exist in the water.
Because the way they float is like in slow motion. It's just satisfying.
It's kind of a hands-on thing, and they have to respond because we want them to understand. So it's kind of like we're pushing them to think beyond what they know or what they saw in that video that they first see before they come here.
They live under them.
And then to test this hypothesis, we pull up these habitat cages. They're like an open, kind of like a crab cage. One side is filled with oyster shells, the other is just open space. And we use it so that we can create habitat for animals that might be living in the bay and in the harbor.
One thing I like today is cleaning this oyster right here. I think it's a good experience for people who love to see this type of thing. But people who wants to be around the water, I think it's going to be a good experience for them.
My students have made me smile because they have been repeating words that we've learned in the lesson, and they've shown me that they really were engaged in class. That pre-lesson will have them ready for the actual activities that they're going to be doing when they come to the aquarium, and they'll really be engaged because then they can connect the knowledge that they've learned in the classroom to the actual knowledge that they'll need to actually complete the lessons here at the aquarium.
Make sure to check with your school as the What Lives in the Harbor program expands to more schools in the coming year. Next in this multi-lesson experience for City Springs is to engage with the community on an action project to help improve water quality in the harbor. This has been Bass and Saul with the City Schools Student Media Team. See you next time.
Yay! Morgan State University and hands-on at the harbor.
Exactly. So that is one of our projects that we're working on that I've been working on with the academics department, and it is so exciting because it meets so many different things. It gets the kids outside. It's a partnership with Morgan and also Coppin and Towson. So it gets pre-service teachers out. It gets the hands-on learning, and it helps us meet the state requirements of having a meaningful educational experience.
I just want to say, just one thing and let you move on because we don't have that much time. I am so tickled at seeing this. This is where we need to be, getting all these kids out to wetlands, the harbor. Some of these kids, you would be very surprised, some have never been to the harbor, right here in Baltimore City. So I am, that's everything. But thank you so much.
Thank you. So I'm just going to do a quick run through of the sustainability activities over the last school year. Just to remind you that we started this work through the Baltimore City Sustainability Plan. We then, you all passed a sustainability policy in 2016. And part of that required us to create a sustainability plan. And that is where really the bulk of the goals and metrics lie. And so that's something that we worked on a lot last year. And these 6 categories have lots of specific goals and metrics that we are now tracking. And as part of the report to the executive committee of the full board, we have a full chart that goes through all of those one by one and where we stand on them, and is something that we can go into more detail, but this is more of a summary report. And the full metrics can be found on the Baltimore City Schools webpage /sustainability. So moving through each of these categories, as I said, I'm just going to give a brief summary. In the goal of developing environmentally literate students, which is our our primary goal, we're here to educate kids. We have really worked hard on providing standards-based curriculum to have an equitable experience for all of our kids. So we have done a lot of greening work so far, but a lot of it has been dependent upon a teacher who is going above and beyond, who's writing a grant, who's coming in early, who's staying late. We're trying to get it so that no matter where you're in school, in 6th grade, for example, you will go to the aquarium and have that experience. And so, as you can see, we have worked a lot in the science department with Josh Gabriel's there on aligning experiences with our partners in the city to specific science units in the SABE's science curriculum. We also have an experience for the 4th grade as part of the Every Kid in a Park project. So we've had about 5,000 kids last year visit one of 3 parks across the city.
Thing I don't
Sure.
see over here, you do have Morgan State University's Department of Excellence in Science and Math.
Yes.
And he has that grant there with Chesapeake Bay.
Yes.
Is that one of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation is right there?
The one here listed for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation is separate. I believe
Okay.
that one is another one that Josh is working on that I have not been as directly involved in.
Dr. Kevin Peters.
Okay.
Okay, at Morgan State. And they during the summertime, they will take the kids and go out to Chesapeake Bay and watersheds and wetlands, and they have grants. They have really good NSF grants, so
Great.
keep that in mind.
Thank you. In the effort to develop environmentally literate students, we know we also need to train teachers, particularly teachers in the lower grades that may be less comfortable with science. We also need to get teachers comfortable with bringing kids outside, which for some people is overwhelming and keeps them inside. And so we have partnered with a number of different organizations to provide professional development, whether it be at the systemic PD days or through Saturday, one-day trainings or through longer summer trainings. We also have worked on in our non-teaching staff, both with our custodial maintenance, food and nutrition services training through OSHA, and as well as with our ground shop on helping to maintain some of these facilities and integrate in some of the daily practices that it can improve our environmental impact. One of the big advantages that we have by being here in Baltimore is the number of partners we have. So this is just a very small listing of some of them. We have a big Green Schools network of people that are interested in this work. We do a monthly outreach to them, connecting schools to partners, and that can be one time, it can be many months or even many years. It can involve funding, it can involve the partner coming to the school, the kids going out. It's really very broad, and we've been very fortunate with those relationships.
Where's Parks and People?
Parks and People Foundation is, they're located near.
Right. No, I mean, they're not here.
They are, there, it's that green one with the leaf.
Oh, there, I couldn't see it. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Moving into the healthy school environments category, this slide is about our green cleaning effort. This is required by the state of Maryland, and so we have been making slow progress on this. So we do have a number of schools now are purchasing at least some of the correct supplies. We still have a long way to go. Operations now has a area facilities manager who is specifically focused on custodial support, and so we're hoping that next year this will be a much better number. But the challenge is really that we have to persuade every single school and every single custodian about this as versus a central purchasing, which is what many of our other school districts around the state who are working to implement this have to do. In the category of reducing and conserving natural resources, one of the main categories is reducing our solid waste. So we are slowly inching up the number of schools that have successful recycling programs, getting them the bins and support that they need. We continue to partner with the City Department of Public Works to pick up our recycling at no cost from every school. At the end of last year, the Information Technology Department did enter into an electronics recycling contract. So as you can see, there was a big backlog of old IT equipment in closets and places that were really waiting for this contract to open up. And so thousands of pounds of electronics were recycled at the end of last year. In the energy category, we have lots of different projects. So these have been everything from lighting to HVAC. We have made good progress on the net zero energy schools of Graceland and Holabird, which are now under construction. Safer ways to reduce and get rid of our light bulbs really spans from the very large to the very small in our operations effort to conserve energy and change behaviors and purchasing practices. In the category of improving school green spaces, we're really trying to make efforts to make our outdoor spaces more inviting, more pleasant for our kids to be in. Partnered with the National Wildlife Federation, with Real School Gardens, to do some beautification projects on our school grounds. And we now have 4 Farms to School specialists who are funded by Food and Nutrition Services, who started at the beginning of this year, but that was in the planning for much of last year, that are going to be focusing on second grade trips to Great Kids Farm, as well as supporting schools that are interested in gardening at their schools' sites. In the Engaging School Communities category, we have lots, as I said, lots of different partnerships earlier. Constellation and BGE have continued to be our main funding partners for this work, both for my position as well as for the smaller green grants that schools get. And we are continuing to strategize about how to broaden that field of funders. In addition to those two, we've received support from Krieger, from Fund for Change, from the Ravens, a number of smaller gifts from individuals as well. We have worked to really try and build a network of staff throughout the schools. So these are just some of the numbers of schools that have done some level of work. Most of our schools have designated a sustainability ambassador, which is required by the sustainability policy, but a very small number of them have actually taken steps towards completing a sustainability plan and going through a full green school certification, but that is a slowly growing number. We have 24 teachers who received achievement units for their greening work last year. We are on track right now for 53. And we have also participated in lots of different engagement activities with the Family and Community Engagement Office to try and reach both new teachers, families, community members through their events. And our student leadership piece, we have continued, as I mentioned, those greening grants have really engaged students at all grade levels, energy grants. We have several different paid internships that are recurring, one through the Parks and People Foundation, their branches program, and one through the City Office of Sustainability. And the students were very active in a group that they had founded called Baltimore Beyond Plastic last year and were instrumental in the styrofoam ban that was passed by the City Council. And 2 of our students did win a prestigious national award last year for their work. Separate from the sustainability plan, I wanted to mention that the 21st Century Schools program is on track to be meeting all of the LEED requirements. It's required that they meet silver, but several are well beyond that, and many are highly energy efficient and do have the modern geothermal heating and cooling systems. And then I just wanted to mention last year there was just a big burst of recognition and research about the value of the impact of children when exposed to nature. And these are just some excerpts of some of the studies that have been compiled by the Children in Nature Network about whether, it's academic performance, mental health, retention, all sorts of issues can really can benefit when children are outside and are experiencing nature. And we are a part of a city grant called Cities Connecting Children to Nature, and the City Department of Recreation and Parks and the Y of Central Maryland are spearheading that effort and are really focused on violence prevention and trauma-informed care and ways to help children who are suffering from those to improve their outcomes through exposure to nature. The challenges that we face in this work are as they have been. You can see them all listed there, whether they be budgetary or time and the capacity and the many, many things that are on everybody's plate at any given time is how can we really work this into people's regular job description and the benefits that they can see, but that sometimes it is new, it is different, it is a change, and that can be challenging. In 2019, we'll be continuing to focus on the sustainability plan, but really with a focus on the interdepartmental connections and continuing to support teachers and schools through myriad efforts and partnerships with external and internal folks. So that concludes my presentation. I welcome any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Have any questions, Commissioners?
Excuse me, I have a myriad of questions.
Could you introduce yourself?
Vernon Reed. I have a myriad of questions. I guess the first one is, in terms of costs, the net economic costs, does BG&E and Constellation cover all that, or you have some costs to the Baltimore City Public School System?
So my salary and the green grants that I mentioned are all paid for through funding that we raise from Constellation, BGE, Krieger, Enterprise. There's a fairly lengthy list of them. Then there are individual projects that may have some expense to Baltimore City Schools. For example, implementing the green cleaning project, that is something that every school, instead of buying their regular cleaning products, they now need to buy the designated cleaning product. But for example, the trips to the schools, the curriculum embedded trips, those have been funded through different grants, Chesapeake Bay Trust, NOAA, Visit Baltimore Foundation actually gave us a bunch of money for transportation funds this year to get kids to those trips. So it's been a hybrid.
Okay, my second question is, the young teach us all. So what are you teaching the young kids about, I guess, trash and debris, and how can they take that home into their greater community, say, so we don't see all this trash on the street, plastic bags all across the town?
So our hope is that by bringing kids to the harbor and having kids look at water quality and learn about the environment, that it becomes something that is important to them and that they see that they have a role in making our city clean, and that it's not just when you're out, in nature in Western Maryland, or if you're out in the Bay, that you're part of nature, that we are all part of this. And so the more that we can have that be part of both the classroom experience and getting kids involved in these green teams and leading recycling efforts at their schools, those kids, particularly the young ones, are the ones that we hear from parents. The kids are then shaking their finger at their parents and saying, why aren't you recycling? And that will hopefully have an influence as those children grow.
So you are seeing benefits?
We are seeing benefits, yes. It's a slow road. I mean, as you could see from some of the recycling numbers, we do not have strong recycling programs at all of our schools. It's still an effort to get people to lead those and focus on them and then educate everyone within the school to recycle properly. So there still remains a lot of work to be done.
And lastly, you talked about trauma care. What are you doing there?
Well, our goal is that by better connecting our children to be outside and to help train our teachers to understand that there's value. It's not just like, oh, it's fun to go to the zoo, or it's fun to go to the aquarium to take a field trip, that these can be valuable experiences that not only are fun, help them teach their curriculum, but also can help their children with their mental health and their academic health. And whether it be a nature play space on the playgrounds, trying to bring our partners to schools so that schools see there's value in this work, and helping to educate about all the different options that are out there and what we can help bring to schools to help them with their students and their care. And we're also talking increasingly with the Office of the Whole Child and talking about gardens, and having those 4 farm-to-school specialists is a huge benefit to us. That's 4 people that we didn't have before that will help us see hopefully some real benefits of place-based, that you don't just have to go out to Great Kids Farm to have this experience. It's something that you could do on your school campus.
And that's based on a lot of the research that exists about exposure to nature, exposure to things like gardening, being in the woods, and that direct relationship to mental health and to improve mental health and state of mind and kind of attitude about life and so on. There's lots of research on the relationship between that and improved mental health outcomes.
Yeah, a question about the sustainability plans at the school level. Is there a goal to get up from 19% to something higher, or is it a policy that every school should have a plan? And what is the plan to get a plan?
The sustainability policy that you passed requires that every school submit a sustainability plan. So we have many schools that are not meeting that requirement. I do not have a formal goal of a number that I want to get to, other than increasing that number steadily. I was hoping to get more this year, but I have not. And so my thought currently is to convene a group of teachers to really get some feedback on is it something with the document itself? Is it what would make it easier and better, and how can I be more helpful to those schools to create that plan for them?
does the burden fall on you entirely, or are there other people that are somewhere in the hierarchy that would also convey that message?
You're looking over it.
As it currently stands, it is my role to follow up with the sustainability ambassadors to remind them and urge them to be submitting that document.
More questions? I just want to thank you because it's absolutely critical that we deal with this. And somewhere, I don't know if we have it in our strategic plan to increase that number. I don't know. It might be, but. No, okay. The other thing that I want to mention that you need to know, you're right on the button because if you looked at 60 Minutes this Sunday, a large percentage of the show dealt with recycling and the failure of being able to recycle all of the waste that's going on, because most of the waste that we recycle goes to China, and China has all of this recycling waste and they're doing absolutely zero with it, and it's going back to the countries that it came from. And they're trying to make a decision. We are talking about it, but it's not being very successful. So if you have a chance this past Sunday, go on whatever you can and bring that up. It would be a nice introduction or show to the schools that are doing the work, and then it would be nice to show that video. And you can get it online. But it was this Sunday, and it went on for about 15. Did you see it? Scary. Yeah, it was very scary. Mm-hmm. But thank you very much.
Thank you
Appreciate
very much.
it, and it was interesting, and I'm so glad that you're doing this good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners, Chief of Staff, COO. We are presenting Montebello this morning, the last of our 28 schools in the current program. I am Sherry Vincent, the Interim Executive Director of the 21st Century School Buildings Program. Not speaking still? Oh, sorry. Apologize. How's that? Is that better? Can you hear me now? Okay. I think it just wasn't aimed upwards. Here we go. Montebello is the 28th of our 28 schools in the current program. I am Sherry Vincent, the Executive Director of the 21st Century School Buildings Program, and Maureen Gershberg, our Ed Planner, is here to present Montebello this morning.
Okay, just to give some context, Montebello is located actually right on Lake Montebello, and then also at the intersection of Hartford and 32nd Street. So, all right, this is the existing building as it is. The lines on there, they are topographic lines, which means that there's a change in grade. One of the biggest challenges with this site is the huge grade drop from Hartford Road, and then it goes downhill several stories as you get to the lake. So our building actually, the current building deals with this kind of, and it's one of the things that they have to consider when we are looking at the project. It drops, I think, about 3 or 4 stories, Sherry?
From front to back of the building?
Yeah.
At least 2.
Yeah, at least 2, and then it goes downhill even more once you're past the building down to the lake. Is this existing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is the proposed site plan. This is a renovation-only project. We are not expanding the program. It's going to be 2 sections of PK through 8th, which is what it currently is. The original building is the longer one, and then off to the side you'll see the gym addition. The proposed site plan shows a PK to 2 and a 3 to 5 play area off to the left. And then we'll be removing the portables that are currently where the parking lot is. And there's going to be an entry plaza to help connect the gym to the main building. There's also going to be extensive ramping. It's right below that playground because, again, there's just such a huge grade drop. And they'll also be looking at reinforcing the entrance, which right now is kind of lost, and we'll be putting in a bus drop-off as well. And then off to the right-hand side, you'll see additional drop-off and then some visitor parking. What's that? Yeah, we forgot to arrange that. Sorry. As I said, the building is, it straddles that grade difference. We're going to start on the bottom floor, which is not where you enter off of. On the bottom floor, we'll have student dining, which is currently where it is. That's staying in place, but we'll be improving the space there.
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the top of the page, we'll have the art classroom on the left, that's the peach colored, and then just storage on the right, which is the green colored.
Do we have a green space here?
Hold on a second.
Yeah,
So the play area is going to be this yellow space off to the side. That's where the playgrounds are going to be.
Okay.
There's 2 historic pavilions, which are the dark brown colored areas. And so right now they're not used that much. And the idea behind kind of putting the play areas on this side was to make the area more usable. So again, this was that. And then you see those 2 pavilions right there on the left. This was the bottom floor. We next have the ground floor, which you're still not on the main level that you enter on yet. On this level, we have our youngest kids. We have our pre-K, K, first and second graders, as well as a special ed classroom. And then because this is a renovation only and we're not making the program bigger, we're not going to have the collaboration spaces that you would see in our typical 21st century spaces, but we have been able to put in some of those support spaces, such as a resource room, teacher planning, and storage, and that's what that upper dark blue spot is, and then the 2 little green spots right next to it. In the wing where the gym is off to the right, so this is going to be underneath the gym, is a music classroom and a community space. If we continue up the next level, this is the main level that we enter on, where you see that red arrow, that's the main entry. And so when you enter, you'll have the main office and guidance and the IEP suite and health right when you first enter. On this level, we have 3rd and 4th grade in the rear, and we have the media center is the purple block there. And there's also going to be a technology lab, which we're going to be putting in as the project, which they don't currently have. We are able to fit in a collab space here, and that's going to be that lime green color, which is towards the top. And as I mentioned earlier, in the wing off to the right, this is the level that our gym is on. If you remember, the music and community space are going to be underneath that gym, but the gym is on the main level.
Question, how many students will occupy this building?
It's going to be around 600-ish.
Okay.
Yeah. If we continue up to the next level, which is at the top. Yep, this is the last level. Mm-hmm. We have our 5th through 8th graders up here. The peach space that you see in the center is our upper level science classroom, which we're also putting in, which they don't currently have. And there's also a special ed classroom as well.
Question real quick. Is it possible for us to have off of the science classroom like a small greenhouse?
So
Is that
this
possible?
science classroom is up many levels.
Okay, that's why I asked.
Yeah, so this
Because
there's
right
no
off of that you could have the lighting. Or is that possible? I'm just asking.
we will not be extending out the building because that would be increasing the square footage, and this is strictly renovation
Okay,
only.
thank you so much.
And so that's all of it is for the floor plans. Let's go on to the elevations. That top elevation you see there, that is the gym, I believe, right? That's the gym? Or is that the main?
No,
That's the main, sorry, that's the main entry right now when you walk in. Again, right now, it's kind of hard to see the main entry just because there's so much traffic at the intersection of 32nd and Hartford. So they're gonna be looking at, again, putting in the bus drop off and kind of just making it more recognizable as the main entry to the building. We have the north elevation on the bottom. This is the east elevation. And this is the west elevation. And from this, you can really start to see that huge grade drop that's occurring from on your right-hand side, that's where you enter school. And on the left-hand side, that's where the lake is. So again, we just have this huge drop that is, that the site navigates. Okay, we have south and north elevations.
That was the gym, I think.
Okay.
The gym.
Possibly, yeah. Yep, sorry, this is the gym elevations, that addition off to the right. This is the gym from the east.
It's one quick question.
Go, please.
Because I help build buildings. How many elevators do you have in that building?
I think currently one. Is there one?
This one.
Hey Cindy, is there an elevator in the gym portion of
There should be
Montebello? Do you
two.
know? Okay. The entire school would be made ADA as part of it.
Oh, okay. I needed to know that because when elevators go down, the issue is getting students from one level to the other for students with disabilities. So you have just one?
There would likely be one. That's pretty typical in all of our schools.
Is it? Okay.
Let's check back for a second.
You're saying right now it's not ADA compliant, but as a part of this process, it will be.
I believe,
Yes.
I don't think so sorry, Cindy. We don't know for sure. I'm gonna guess that probably the gym portion is probably pretty hard to navigate in a wheelchair, the two levels of that. But I could be wrong.
That's really something, don't you think, that we should think about in advance? Because when the elevator goes down, there is a serious issue going on, getting students, wheelchair-bound students from one level to the other. And that can create a problem. Can't we think of that in
Yeah, because you
advance?
can enter it that way.
Is that possible?
Are we
I know
keeping
it's
that one, though?
extra funds,
Okay.
but
All right, so we're actually gonna be having, there's one current elevator, and we'll be putting in an additional one right where let's just go to it, sorry. All right, so where the gym and the main building meet, we're gonna be putting an additional elevator in that crux right there.
Go one more. There it is.
In this middle part right here, we're gonna be adding an elevator. The existing elevator is midway in the main building right now. I think that was it. Do you guys have any additional questions?
There are the elevations.
We have some 3D renderings as well. All right, off to the left, you see those pavilions. This is where that main entrance is. So you have Hartford Road to your right, and you're kind of on 32nd Street from this angle. That's the gym portion to the right.
Commissioner?
When you're sizing the school, you said 600. Do you look at what's happening in the neighborhood, whether they're development
Absolutely.
parcels?
Yeah, so this was an interesting project. When the project first was suggested as part of the 10-year plan, there had been a huge amount of growth. Edison had been the operator. It was a contract school at that point, and it was incredibly popular. When they pulled out, they've lost a lot of students over this past several years, and they have finally plateaued, but we don't anticipate any growth. There is a development in the area called Tivoli, and we looked into that, but I think it ended up producing like about 20 students per our student yield calculator. And we had actually done an additional meeting with the school and the community to kind of go over that project because they had asked about it.
This is from
32nd Street, and that's the lake behind those pavilions on the left, yeah.
We also have cool-down spaces. that
Yeah,
can be
Vernon Reed,
converted if there
Commissioner
are
Reed.
classroom needs.
Project summary, do you have that page?
It's the very beginning.
It's first group of pros you have.
Project overview.
What's your question?
So sorry.
Now, you may want to clean up the second line.
Project summary
Yeah.
or project overview?
Project summary. A, it says. It's on a slide. It's a slide. The FCI suggests that it is more cost-effective to replace this building than to replace it. I think
That
you
was
want to
true.
renovate.
That was true.
Yeah.
No, it says,
You want to renovate it, not replace
Correct.
to replace.
Yeah.
You have.
Oh,
you
I'm
have
sorry,
to
did I
replace.
misunderstand what you
I'm
said?
sorry, I can't hear.
Yes.
Okay, where is it?
Oh, it's in the beginning, that's fine.
Second
I'll-
line,
Okay.
project summary.
I'll fix it. I'll change it.
Thank you.
Thank you for the catch. Yeah.
Do you have additional questions?
Okay, I thought we had more to look at.
I'm so sorry, I can't hear you.
No, I thought we had more to,
Um, yeah.
Commissioner has any questions? Any?
No.
No comments? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, now we will listen to budget update. Excuse me? Okay, budget update, district priority engagement sessions. Thank you very much.
Hello, good morning. Courtney Desabay from the Office of the CFO. I'm going to be giving a brief update on the district priority engagement sessions. So we had discussed these previously with regards to engaging the community a little bit differently this year from how we've done in the past. One of the avenues for that are the priority engagement sessions. So one of the main comments we received last year was that, as we've discussed before, the district makes decisions, and we have these community engagement meetings after the fact, after the decisions have already been made. So the engagement this year was designed to provide the opportunity for the community to see some of the decision-making in action and also give input into that process for the central office. So what we did was we essentially tasked the chiefs in the central office to give us the priority items that they are thinking of for the fiscal year 20 budget. And bring these before the community for feedback and for input. The idea behind having the chiefs bring the priorities or discuss the priorities is that we didn't want to put anything before the public that was not actually doable or feasible. Now, this is not to say that everything on the list can take place. As we know, we're in a tight fiscal climate. So these things are, in essence, to some extent or the other, would either have to be competing against current priorities or even each other for funding. So this process was really to put these in front of the community and allow them to pick their favorites, to pick the ones that they see as being the highest priority or being the highest need, based on the information they provided, based on the context of their communities and their schools and their families and so forth. So what I'm going to go through is just a sample of what the presentation looks like for the community, and also there's a list of the priorities in there. I'm not going to go through explaining all the priorities. The chiefs, when we do the community engagement, the chiefs or the representatives are on hand. They explain the priorities, they explain the reasons for those priorities. If you have questions on any of them, we can take those back and get the feedback on those from those departments as well. All right. So the format of the meeting, the first thing it starts with, well, when we did the first meeting at Mervo, it started with me explaining what the budget process looks like and how district funding works. The last meeting at Dorothy I. Height, I did not have to run my mouth because we had a wonderful video by the students. They worked in conjunction with communications to put together a 3-minute video that was supposed to replace, I don't know if you guys recall, there was a video we had a few years back, an animated video on how fair student funding works. This one's a little more integrated than that and a lot more up to date, where it explains not only how the district funding works, but how the district receives revenue as well. So it was, there was a voiceover done by one of our students, Imani. The animation in the video was done by two of our students, Ariana and another student, I think from the design school. So they put the video and the graphics together with help from the staff from the communications department. It was actually very well received when we presented it at Dorothy I. Height. Actually, I kind of expected, it was, I guess, a bit of a test. Usually we go in, like I said, with the introduction on the finances and the background, and most of the time people aren't very interested in hearing a lot of information from us. So this time around, we started by not doing any of that. We just presented the video with the goal being that if there were questions afterwards, we could kind of fill in the gaps as needed. But from the response we received from the community, everyone seemed to have received it very well. They didn't have a lot of subsequent questions from the video itself.
Courtenay,
Yes.
you gonna show us the video?
I would like to show the video today, but it is not part of this current presentation. We do have it listed on Vimeo, and we are doing updates to it. And because of timing also, I was advised to kind of stick to the presentation at hand.
Since you don't have the video, it's just 3 minutes, but anyway, could you send it to
Absolutely.
Mr. Gant?
Yeah, absolutely.
Send it to him, and he will send it to us. We can view it, and we don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, if you guys have any comments or feedback on the video, I'll be happy to take that to the team as well. Because like I said, they're still doing a few updates to the video in real time.
This is whatever, the draft or whatever you have.
Yeah.
So as you're talking, we can relate to
Understood.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
Just have it sent, and we can send it to us online.
Yeah, we could do that. That's
Okay,
not a problem.
thanks.
The second part of the presentation is just a background review on the blueprint, just showing how everything and all the priority discussions tied to the district's overall blueprint. Then we get into the discussion on the priorities. So as I mentioned, these are presented, each individual priority is presented by the departments that are, proposing these priorities. So in a lot of instances, we had the chiefs or we had their special assistants or department heads or executive directors. So we had a lot of district office staff who took the time out to come to these meetings to discuss the priorities, to discuss the needs for these, the need for these priorities, also some of the trade-offs, what they would have to do to make some of these things a reality. So they went through the list, and we posted these in a survey online on K-12 Insight that the community has access to. They also had hard copies of the survey that they could kind of check off their favorites and return to the FCE staff as well. So that's the format that the meetings took. So the bulk of the meeting is that interaction. It's people asking questions about the specific priorities, digging in on how this fits or how this works or why do we need this, those sort of questions, which were pretty important. And also being able to get a response from the staff who directly oversee these things, I think was very important. Again, not hearing necessarily from finance people talking about finance information. The discussion was really about prioritization and the impact of these bodies of work. So it was the first meeting, as I mentioned, was in Mervo. That first meeting, we actually had more staff than community members, and even some of the community members we had attend were staff, teachers or community people from the school and community.
How many did you have from the public?
In the first meeting?
Yeah.
There were about 7 or 8, I think, and of which, if I recall correctly, 2 of them, I think, were teachers. At these meetings also, we have been, as you recall, we had discussed before providing food. There is food available at the meeting, so we start the meeting actually 30 minutes earlier so people can access food. Also, there's childcare available at the meetings and translation as well. So the list of priorities, as I mentioned, are in the presentation here, and you can go through these. And if there anything that you want further explanations on, we can forward the questions to the individual departments.
I have a question,
Sure.
Courtenay, because I see Sabrina here with us too. How was the outreach to get people to these meetings so far?
That's exactly why she's here today.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Hi, Sabrina.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sabrina Sutton, the Interim Executive Director in the Office of Engagement. So the first meeting that we had at Mervo, the outreach wasn't as aggressive because we didn't have the flyer yet. And so we were able to communicate via email and and some wording on Facebook about the first one, but we didn't have the flyer, which is a little bit more captivating for some to have the flyer. So when we talk about Dorothy Height, you'll see that we did have a lot more, well, maybe a couple of more folk there because of the communication and how we were able to, we have a ground game where we go out to the community and drop flyers to the schools that are in the surrounding area. We have posters that we put up at stores and things like that near the schools. So the engagement is a lot more aggressive, but we knew that the flyers would be important, so.
The more aggressive engagement game, has it delivered significantly more people?
Yeah, absolutely.
You
At
would say
Dorothy
yes
Height,
to that?
there were a lot more people present. The room that we used was packed. We actually had more community members and staff this time around.
Okay.
And not just that, the quality of the engagement, I think, was a lot better. We had, there were instances where there were some things being discussed, like restorative practices. We had teachers who could talk about what that meant in their classrooms and principals. We had parents, we had people from different aspects and different areas and different expertise. So the engagement, I think, was a lot more meaningful that second time around, too. So it wasn't just having bodies there. There was actual engagement taking place. Yeah.
And the second go round as well, we started an Eventbrite, and so we sent that out, and we send communication to the principals that are in the surrounding area. I think we might have did a 1 or 2 mile radius, and we invited the principals. Actually, we put it on their calendar and asked that they would invite staff and families as well to come. Also drop flyers at some of the surrounding schools so that they can be backpacked in the young people's, backpack. So a lot of aggressive outreach around this because we knew what happened last year. But I do have some thoughts about that we could talk about later.
So, excuse me, anyone? So you did reach out as far to the edge of Baltimore as possible. And when I say that, you go out Evanston Village, you got to Cherry Hill. You go to different areas to drop these flyers?
No, so we really do try to go as far as maybe a mile or maybe 2 mile radius. I think when we looked on the map, we tried to get schools that were closer to where we were hosting the meeting.
Okay. Right.
So it could have been up to 20 or more schools that we contacted.
Right. I just have a great concern, and I say this all the time, is reaching out to the schools that we don't ever get to. And, we hear these stories that I didn't get the message and they're not hearing what, the benefits of whatever we're doing. I just, we have parents that cannot leave from certain areas to catch a bus, to get to a meeting, because of course they have to meet their kids, they have dinner and homework, things like that occur. I just hope that we just continue, and we are, just continue trying to reach out to areas that are not readily reachable, according to what you have. So that's something that we just have to move forward doing. Okay.
Yeah.
You're doing a good job. It's just that we just gotta continue trying to push it out to
Right.
these areas that we don't normally get to.
And what would happen is, in doing that, we would have a lot more meetings because there are areas that historically, even if you had it in their community, they wouldn't come out. But not to say we wouldn't want to leave those communities out.
Right.
But then we would have to have at least, when we look at a map geographically, we would probably have to have at least 10 of those meetings to be able to be in like a 1 or 2 mile radius from a particular school.
No, I totally understand, but we just have to keep trying.
Yes, ma'am.
Because they always say, you always get 1 or 2 parents who said that I wanted to hear about it, but I didn't get a message, or maybe we need to put the burden on the principal, which we don't need to really do, but get the principal to start trying harder to get them out. And we talked about having like a pizza night or snack night, whatever, a little activity to bring them in, because when you start serving food, they come.
Right.
They don't have to cook.
Right.
Okay, and I found that with almost any program that you have. Say we're going to have pizza night, we're going to have drinks, and then they show up with all the children. And
99% of our engagement efforts, we have food.
okay.
So, yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Supreme.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we had food, as I mentioned, childcare, translation as well. We'll try to make it as accessible as possible. So the next one will be January 7th at Liberty, and then we have another one that same week, January 9th at William Paca, which that presentation will be done in Spanish, as we had mentioned before.
And can I add to you that we already started our engagement efforts as far as reaching out, because we know because of the break, and so we're communicated with the principals, we communicated with some of the stakeholders that are around that area, and then when we come back, the next day when we come back, we will continue that engagement effort as well.
How did you use the slides 4 and 5? Were people encouraged to go online and vote for them? Or what does the 28 priorities represent, or wish list, I guess?
So this slides 4 and 5 are just a summary of the slides that follow with the individual priorities. So this is without some of the more detailed context that you find on the other slides, just so that they have kind of an at-a-glance view. So we gave this as a summary when we gave the individual ones that you see in the further slides with the boxes, so that they could kind of check off as well. And then, as I mentioned, we have the survey online that they could go into the survey and make their selections as well. And the survey has the more detailed versions like these down here.
But what you represented to those that were there is we can't do all of these. Some are trade-offs, some are in conflict.
Correct.
It's just a matter of capacity and resources, so help us determine priorities.
Correct, yeah. So we asked everyone to select the 5 that they felt were the highest
5.
priority. Yeah, and we sort of set the stage with the expectations that, and I think this is, part of this is a communication, has historically been a communication challenge, and we're trying to make sure we're upfront with this, that not because something is selected necessarily means that it can actually take place. That's some of the reality of it. We have to look at the context of how these things fit together. But if it's not taking place, we also need to be able to explain to the community why that is the case. And maybe we end up in a scenario based on, changes between now and February or March, where something else, something happens that moves something up on the priority list. There are just, other things that take place in reality that may affect this list. But we want to be very transparent with providing the feedback, showing the community what, their peers have selected as well, and presenting all that information to the board. So when we're going through the decision-making process for these priorities, that we have all that information at hand.
Great. So the last thing I would say is I was not 100% aligned with my fellow board members with regard to whether this would attract a number of people. And the question always comes, did we flyer enough? Did we do enough outreach? Sort of assuming that we failed in some way if a lot of people didn't show, but it also could be that people are comfortable with things, or they're doing something else, or they came to a different forum, or they're getting it on TV or whatever. And I don't know if any of that's true or not, but I would just say I would evaluate this at the end, see how many people showed up, maybe survey them, get a sense of whether it met your goals before we decide exactly what we're doing next year.
Yes, I think, FCE has also been giving out feedback surveys separate from this on the actual engagement itself. So based on, did you think this was helpful? Was it meaningful? Those sort of questions as well, to see if the method that we're using is effective. I will say, at least from my engagements, speaking for myself and talking to people after the meetings and so forth, people are seeing that pretty much everything on the list is important. And they're also understanding the stretch on the resources, and that, that we deal with competing priorities on a regular basis. And I think they're getting through this an understanding also of how difficult the decision-making process is, how difficult it is for the board, to emphasize one thing over another, or to choose one thing over another, and that there are no bad ideas here, there are no bad priorities. And a lot of these things, they look at the list and they're like, well, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need this, and they're seeing the difficulty in sort of choosing between these things as well, and getting an appreciation for what that means for the position you're in that the district is in financially. That was the end, if there are any other questions. Yeah. I kind of jumped back on the question, but at the end, the last thing we had was just the upcoming engagements, as I mentioned, January 7th and January 9th, and also at the school level. Schools are doing a similar engagement where they're speaking to their communities beforehand, discussing their priorities on an individual school level before they get into the community budget forums in February and the budget reviews. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Have a good day.
Thank you, Sabrina.
You're welcome.
Next, 21st Century School Buildings Program and annual report.
Good morning again. Sherry Vincent, Interim Executive Director of the 21st Century School Buildings Program. And I'm going to apologize at the outset that when I printed this out this morning, I realized that you received an old draft.
Sorry, I can hardly hear you. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
let me try again. Apologize. When I printed this out this morning, I realized that what was submitted was an old draft. So unfortunately, there are a few inconsistencies, and you will need to be delivered a current version.
So what we're looking at is old.
There are, yes, it was a draft, this was a draft in process.
Okay.
So there are some inconsistencies and some information that are from last year and not this year, which I'm sure you probably surmised as you looked through it. So I apologize for that. I can still give you an overview of this year, but if that's your preference, or I can do this at a different meeting.
Just do me one more favor.
Yes.
Re-explain what you're saying, last year's presentation.
So this was an interim draft
Okay.
as it was transitioning from last year's presentation to this year's. And unfortunately, this is not the version that should have been submitted for your review.
This is not the version.
This is not the submission. This is not the current submission. I apologize.
Is it easy enough for you to walk us through what's different, or should we do this in the January conversation? We can't.
Okay, if this is not the proper document, why are we listening to it?
How different is it from the final?
So there are some things that we don't have or didn't have at this time at all, which was not, would not have been in here. So even though we have a preliminary budget from MSA, we don't have some of the detailed analysis that they usually would provide that would go into this. So there's those kinds of things that are not here, literally weren't here anyway. But there are some inconsistencies in some of the percentages that are listed and some of the information. Yeah.
So in front of you, you have the good draft.
No, I printed this out realizing, and then I realized that this is what you got and it's an old draft.
Okay, because I thought if you had a good draft, you could make a copy.
Yeah, no, I don't have that draft in front of me.
Would you say it's 80% correct?
Yeah, more or less, yes, but there are just, I can point out the inconsistencies.
So my understanding is this is due to MSA on January 15th, correct?
No, January 15th is the date that we typically would say that it's done. That would be the due date for the document to the legislature. But at this point, because we have, our board vote is on January 8th this year, and that affects some of the portfolio outcomes, some of that information would not be available early enough for the January 15th date to be a good date anyway.
Okay. I just think we should just move forward with what we have, and just Sherry can let us know what's inconsistent, and then she can update the board with the updated information at a later date.
Yes, I can provide. Yeah.
I just don't want to leave here being uncomfortable. And I understand
Understood.
what you're saying,
Mhm.
but it's still, I'm just really uncomfortable. And that's just who I am as a researcher.
I completely understand.
So what you're presenting is not going to be complete.
It's not 100% complete, that's correct,
And the
because I don't have all the
percentages are
information.
not complete and accurate.
And some of the information is from last year, not this year.
We don't go with most of accurate.
Is it possible that she can flag the things during the presentation that needs to be revised and updated?
That's a great idea.
Okay.
Because you can't have us sitting here, and look, it's not your fault, I'm just saying. But I have to be clear. I don't want to walk away not being clear. You know what I'm saying?
Understood.
I'm saying, when we talk about percentages, we talk about, first of all, I don't like percentages unless you're adding numbers, and I'm sure you did that. But when you say a large percentage of it, well, not a large, a percentage of it is not there, or it's not accurate, or whatever, what do I review? You see, and I
Right.
want to review what's accurate. So
Correct.
as you move through the process, and we don't have it on, I don't have it where I can document right here. As you move through the process, we need to red line what could, the questions and the concerns. Am I making it kind of clear?
Any way you'd like me to proceed would be fine.
Christian, you'll red line kind of where we have.
Can you red line what's, and that would be good. If as you're presenting, you need to we need to make note that this area is not, it will change. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because it's a draft or whatever, and I'm good with that. But because of the timeline, and I do know I'm moving kind of slow here, but I don't want to leave this room being uncertain, and I'm sure you understand that.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay. Yeah, so Chair's going to flag the information that needs to be redlined. I'm going to take notes, and then you'll get an updated version at a later date.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gant.
So, again, this is meant to be just the highlights of this year's annual report and the major accomplishments. And I just reiterate that it is a requirement of the MOU, and that adjustments to the submission date did occur in the past that moved it from October 1 to January 15th. I do explain why January 15th is a bit of a challenge this year, simply because our portfolio vote is not until January 8th, and so there's some additional work that needs to be done between that vote, those decisions, and when the final report is issued, mostly around the Exhibit 6 information. In the table of contents summary, these are pretty much pro forma from prior reports. There's an executive summary. There's the activity from the year for the Plan Year 1 and Plan Year 2 schools. Program management information, procurement information around MBE participation, MOU partner committee updates, then public relations, engagement, and communications activities from the year, program financial reports, which we do not have in toto at this time for this year, and then information on the comprehensive maintenance plans and management systems through city schools facilities. So the highlights for this year, these are reasonably accurate. As far as 9 schools are now open, 5 more are under construction. Additional one will break ground in December. That's this month. 7 are in design or will be in design by the end of this year. 5 are awaiting procurement for final design and construction teams. And then the remaining school is the Montebello. I'm sorry, question?
Commissioner.
Which one is breaking ground, Sherry? The one in December?
I believe that's, oh, wait. Hold on. I should know which one that is. It's not cross-country yet. I'm sorry. Right off the top of my head, it's not coming to me, but I will tell you which one that is.
You gotta. Could you do us a favor?
Yes.
Whenever, and this is just for us, so we won't have to ask a lot of questions. And I've said this before. For example, with Commissioner Frank, his question when you say to break ground in December, could you outline that and say the name of the school, and then we can move forward. We won't even have to ask that question. So when you do your revisal or however you do it,
I can name all the schools that are there.
yeah, always do it in such a way there's no questions to ask.
Gotcha.
You got me?
Okay,
and then we can,
sure.
Because we do read, I read it, but I didn't know it was going to be a draft. we do read this, and we wouldn't even be spending that kind of time asking. That's just a thought that you might want to consider the next
Absolutely.
time. Okay, thanks.
I will
a lot.
add those names right in there. Let's see, earlier challenges we talked about, and in the past we have highlighted the fact that the MOU with Baltimore City Recreation and Parks was not completed, and so there was no Recreation Parks programming in any of the new schools. That has now changed. There is, BCRP does now have a presence at Fort Worthington, and we'll hopefully have one in Frederick and then also Dorothy I. Height shortly.
So Sherry, the MOU with Rec and Parks has been signed? Is that
It
what
has
you're
not
saying?
been signed, has not been inked. I wouldn't say not officially, but I think that I am safe in saying that the details have now been agreed to, and the legal folks are just doing their final cleanup. But we feel very comfortable with BCRP, and I think that they are comfortable at this point with what that MOU represents at this point, and also they are looking at moving forward with the individual licensing agreements at the school level. But we have a temporary agreement in place which allows them to be in Fort Worthington right now, and so they'll be moving into the other two schools as well. The utilization rate that's listed here is the old one, and so it is at 81%, and that's where there is one inconsistency in this draft. There is going to be a request to reevaluate the target utilization rate overall by the partners. And then in Exhibit 6, again, I believe that this is not the current information, unless I'm wrong about that. The two buildings have been voted for program closure, and surplus and consolidations remain on track. The votes have not happened as yet. So that is the January 8th vote. That is last year's information. Maintenance planning, the annual CEFMP, I believe, is completed for this year. And then the CMMS continues to be implemented. That's the computerized maintenance and management system. And then the individual BMPs per school project are created but have not been uploaded as yet into the CMMS system. And then in terms of local hiring and MBE, this is accurate. Local hiring commitments are 257 for 9 projects completed and or under construction. The MBA participation average we do not have at this moment. There is a certain amount of scrubbing of the data that has to happen before we can give an accurate assessment on the MBA participation to be 100%.
You said you don't have the number on MBE, but are you close to being compliant or within the guidelines?
Yes, I believe so. But we don't have the action. But what happens is when they actually close out a project and they do all of the complete scrubbing, they have to make sure that they have the accurate information based on what really happened, not just the projections.
But the numbers are okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. This is clearly a draft page, so I actually do not, the highlighted portion is from last year. And so the year 2 openings. So the year 1 openings were all on schedule except for Patterson, which you are aware was delayed almost a year. Patterson is now moving forward again, but clearly not on the same time frame that was originally anticipated. The year 2 school openings are concentrated in 2020 and 21. And so those you'll see in the projections on the following pages. The budget here, again, this was last year's recap in a nutshell, and so that we did not have MSA's comptroller was on vacation and had not been able to supply this to us at this time when this was going to draft. So it should probably have just said MSA will supply.
I have just one question. As we move through this process, are you letting Mr. Gant know where to highlight any changes that's got to be made? Because I don't hear, are you following where? So you already have that? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
The only design build school we had is still Fairmont Harford. That would remain to the case. This is a program summary now of the year one schools. And this is accurate. Patterson is a replacement at the bottom. The partner review has been completed, and that project is moving forward. It is at 100% CDs or construction drawings at this point, and will be moving forward with pulling together their GMP. In year two, these were accurate except for the delivery. I'm sorry, not the delivery. Nope, these are accurate. I apologize. For year two. And then year two program summary continued. There are some dates that are subject to change, and those are only because we have some degree of uncertainty with Montebello and Northwood being the last two schools, and MSA still has those two under review to be sure that there is adequate funding in the program remaining to do them. Montebello is a strategic renovation, and Northwood, in fact, is a replacement.
The two that are under review, are they not on the list?
They're the ones that have the asterisk, Montebello and Northwood.
Where's Montebello?
It's 5 up from the bottom,
Right,
4
right,
up from the bottom, excuse me.
I got it, thanks.
So Northwood should not say TBD, Christian, they should be replacement for Northwood. And then the utilization targets, again, the final district-wide utilization rate of 86% was what was committed to by SY 1920 without swing space. Currently, it is at 81%. And the district will be requesting partners to revisit the utilization targets and revise the board resolution. However, we will continue to close and consolidate programs through the annual portfolio review.
Do you expect us to go below 81%?
I do not know if I can answer that question.
So right now, the way that it's projecting, we don't expect it to hit below 81%, but we know that it's not going to increase to get us closer to that 86%.
The financials, this page, we do not have the financials that are required, the expenses for the periods, and it should say 6/30/2018 and not 17. But the other information is accurate, it just is not entirely with us at this point. In terms of workforce development, so the local hiring commitments versus the total workforce, again, are the information that has to be scrubbed by MSA to be provided as final. The MBE goals are ones that we so far on paper, we have met in the areas of procurement of services and the procurement of goods. That is still correct. The work-based learning and internships for SY 17-18, I believe, are 18 and not 22, Christian.
I'm not clear on why we don't have numbers for hiring and workforce. Could you explain?
So we do have, you'll see at the end, we do enumerate the MBE hires that were, excuse me, let me go back to make sure I have the right page here. I believe that I do. We do have the local hires that we have for the individual schools, and we have the commitments that the contractors made, but when the contractors make the commitments, that still has to be verified once the project is closed out, that all of the committed hires that they had in their contract were actually achieved. Right now, we don't have any reason to think otherwise, and so the information that MSA has been reporting out in the workforce group that meets every other month is that they have achieved them. So.
Right, but are we expected to get a number between now and when we get this final report?
I believe they're planning to have those numbers by then for this year, for what was completed this year. Would not be the current ones under construction, but things that have been closed out. That's what they're looking for.
The expectation is on us too. It's not just a MSA, right? Don't we have an obligation or expectation to try to reach whatever goals we've set for local hiring?
The local hiring is done by, you're talking about, but it's done by the contractors on the individual
But does Baltimore
projects.
City Public Schools have an obligation to meet certain targets in local hiring?
Separate.
Well, I know there's MBE goals. I'm just curious whether local hiring was also part of the goals that we're expected to meet. It's hard to know how we're doing when we don't have any cumulative numbers to date or any projections. So it would be
Those reports do exist. We can supply them to you, absolutely. But as far as scrubbing those numbers from the projects that have closed out, or that are in the process of closing out, just to verify them 100%.
Okay. I know we do for MBE. I don't know about local.
What I can do is provide you with the reports from the most recent executive committee hearing, the MOU executive committee meeting, which occurred just this past month. I think that that information from that report would give you as the very most current information that existed at that time. That might give you some more information that you're looking for.
I want to make sure, because there's a layman, I just want to make sure that when we put out, work out for bids and we hire contractors and make a decision about the contractors that we're going to hire, a part of their responsibility is satisfy the MBE, right?
Yes.
And when we make it that selection, their commitment in that contract is to make sure, and I don't know if somebody else would want to answer this question. I thought that their commitment, that we have made sure that their commitment is to satisfy that percentage of MBE. I thought that was a part of it. So it's back to what you're asking. Are we, am I on the right track? Are we supposed to make sure, Baltimore City Public Schools make sure that we're satisfying the MBE requirement? Because when we hire these contractors.
Yes, but I was asking also about the local hiring.
Which is the local hire. Okay, okay.
Which is how many people around this, I don't know what the local zone is, but that's what I was.
Local in this area, okay.
So if I just may, and Sherry, correct me if I'm wrong, so the contracts are held by MSA, but we are a partner, so we are also tracking with it. And so every quarter or a couple of months, we have a report out that's given on where we are with tracking for MBE. So I think that Sherry was saying is that for the projects that are closed out, there is a scrubbing of the data to ensure that all of that information is accurate. But we are a part of the partnership of tracking that and getting that information on a consistent basis.
That's exactly what I was asking. I think that's the answer. Okay.
But we're not responsible because we don't hold the contracts, but we are a part of the partnership that's tracking to make sure that the contracts are in compliance.
Because you can also make a decision if it's not being done, if they're not complying. Is it right that you can?
I think that as a part of the partnership, Baltimore City should be flagging that it's not in compliance.
That's what I wanted to know. Yeah. Thank you so much.
And they do have a very robust program, and they have actually increased the means by which they pursue local hiring and monitoring of the MBE program. So it's fairly, it gets better, or it has gotten even better, and I think more robust over time. As you recall, in August, we had ribbon cuttings for 6 programs in 5 schools. Elijah Cummings was there, of course, and at Pimlico, and said that this is a destiny moment. The children will never forget this. I think he also said that our children are the messages to the future we will never see. So I think that really stuck with me as well. And then on to engagement. So communications and public relations has this roadmap, which you can look at your leisure, in terms of their transition support timelines for schools, particularly schools that are combining into a new building. And they have listed here the closing schools, the receiving schools, and challenges that arose in some of those situations, and then the type of transition support that was provided. So, for example, Samuel F.B. Morse was closing, and Frederick was receiving those students. The families and students were not necessarily overjoyed about attending Frederick, but they brought the parents together on construction site tours and parent dinners, and made tremendous inroads into acquainting the 2 different populations, and taking some of the anxiety out of the combination of the 2 student populations in the one school. Again, additional information on transition support where it was needed. And I believe that wherever there are blanks, were filled in. And so if there are blanks in any of these columns, engagement had supplied additional information that was not captured in this particular draft. Nope. You have a different draft than I do. No, I don't. Interesting.
Okay, we want to move on.
Okay. Swing space transportation, that was one of the really significant hurdles this year, with the number of students we had in swing space and the amount of yellow bus service that was required, particularly starting this new school year in the fall. It was a Herculean effort on the part of engagement to pull together really quite a large number, 100 office staff from the district to assist in making sure that this was a safe and successful transition. Information went out late, and we know that that was due to the fact that a lot of bus services, we weren't able to procure the bus companies in early as we normally would because there was so many that were needed. So with the information going out late, having those having that large a number of volunteers to make this, again, a safe and successful transition was critical. And then the local hiring numbers here that were achieved by the contractors, the construction management firms, and again, these are the contracts that are held by MSA, but these are local hire numbers that were verified for each of these companies on the schools indicated in the first column. These all indicate, by the way, at or greater than the number that was committed to for local hires by each of the contractors. And that is the end of the presentation.
Okay, I want to thank you for a rigorous presentation and all of the and information that we talked about. You will pass it on to Mr. Gant, Christian. And
he will receive a full and vetted copy that will then be transferred to you.
Okay, thank you. And when you presented, could you highlight the areas, since we read this part?
Yes.
Highlight the areas that's going to be changed so we can be really clear. And
Absolutely.
it'll cut back on all the questions that we might add. Okay?
Agreed, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome, thank you.
Now, I would like to have procurement forward, please, and we can move to this and prepare anybody in commissioners that have questions about what they've read, be prepared to ask the questions.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Jeff Parker, Director of Procurement for the school system. Would you like me to read through each, or do you have specific questions?
One thing I want to say, I'm going to move all the way down to white glove drug and alcohol. I'll say that very quickly. I was really impressed with the information because you didn't leave me with questions. Because usually when it's written, I'm always asking questions not because there's anything wrong, it's just that there's not enough information. So this, that was one of them that I was getting ready to some point ask questions, but you had the information down there. So I don't know if any other commissions have questions, but you can move forward.
Great, thank you very much. So there's 7 procurement items for the board for next January 8th. The first is an agreement to provide wireless communication services requested by T-Mobile. The resources will be placed on Stewart Hill Academy. In return, T-Mobile will reimburse the school system $42,517.46 per year over the initial 5-year term of the agreement, plus 3 additional 5-year terms.
You know what? I did have questions about that one, but you don't have to. We can get it later, Frank.
So
Commissioner.
T-Mobile's paying rent to us?
Correct.
How do we arrive at that rent?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Gregory Gamble with the Office of Real Estate and Permits, and that a number of the 42,000, we arrived with that because that is like the average number that T-Mobile pays for rent in this area, and they are one of the few telecom companies who actually work with us really closely in actually determining the rents that we charge for telecom companies.
And this is for a year, right?
Yes, and then as each year, that amount goes up by 4%.
Did you say they're going to provide the school internet for free?
Oh, no, it's just like regular telecom.
They're not providing any wiring to the school? There's no connection?
No.
They're just using our building?
Yes.
To get up high?
So there's really no cost to us. It's pure profit for us.
But I do want to flag that the review of all the telecom leases is we're in the position where we have put a pause on any more, pushing any more of the telecom leases for approval because we want to do a complete review of it. The market has completely changed since when we first entered into a lot of these different agreements. And so this is probably the last one because we had moved so far into developing this lease to put before the board for approval. But the real estate office is going to be reviewing all telecom leases, just looking at the market rates and some of those different components.
Okay, thanks.
By telecom lease, you're talking cell towers, right?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Okay. I'm sorry. Oh, my God. And what are you reviewing?
So basically what they're leasing is our roof space. They're putting their equipment on our roof because some of our buildings are probably the highest level within the neighborhood. So they're leasing our rent space. What we're reviewing is the market rates. And so most of our telecom leases, Greg, you can correct me if I'm wrong, probably over 5 years ago when we established some of these market rates and some of the leasing requirements. And so what we're doing is that Stewart Hill was one of those schools that we had moved so far within the process of approving those, that we are moving this forward for approval. But the real estate office is going to sit back and do a review of all of it, just from the ground up. What are the other market rates? This is the average still within the state, but what are some of the, what are other school districts doing around telecom leases?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea because we really don't have a sense of what the market is here. We don't see any other comps. But can you reset the rent after 5 years? It's 1 5-year rent plus 3 renewals. Are you able to completely reset the rent after each term is up?
You mean like
Like, can you go from 42,517 to 60? Or is there some restriction in how much you can increase the rent after or before renewal?
Yes, that's something that we can actually negotiate with the telecom company.
It doesn't say, when you said, yeah, it doesn't say in here what happens at the renewal to the rent.
Typically, it goes up by the 4% escalation rate, but as I said before, this company has vowed to work with us, that as we're doing this review, that if it does come up that the market is much greater than 42, it's 60, 65, 70, that they're willing to renegotiate these leases with us because they understand how, great this market is. And, they're growing, they're getting more customers, and so they are willing to renegotiate with us.
Okay. I might have some more questions, but not now.
Okay.
The next contract is a requested increase of the board in the amount of $34,100 to complete the design of the HVAC project at Garrett Heights. Any questions? Thank you. The next contract is to award a competitively bid agreement to Temp Air Company. The purpose of the agreement is to provide new air conditioning equipment at Pauley Institute and Western High School. The cost for the contract is $4.635 million. The next contract is with White Glove Drug and Alcohol Testing. The purpose of the agreement is to provide drug and alcohol testing services for our bus drivers and cab drivers. And the estimated annual amount of the agreement is $40,000. The next agreement is with Bata Environmental Associates to provide asbestos testing services pursuant to the Asbestos Hazard Emergency Response Act of 1986. The estimated annual amount is $90,000. The next contract is with TJ Distributors. This is a request of the board to increase the existing contract by $200,000. The contract provides for playground equipment installation and repair services. We've provided a list of those projects anticipated between now and the contract's end in February of 2019.
These playgrounds are selected?
I do not.
Good morning, Blaine Lipsky, Director of Facility Maintenance and Operations. These current playgrounds that were selected were due to vandalism and or replacement. The 120,790 was at Mount Royal. They had a 20-inch water main replacement there, and we took a section of the playground out, and in turn, when we were putting it back in, we determined that it would probably be best in talking with the school and the community to replace it all. So that was there through agent school money. The rest of them was a fire replacement, damaged slide at Beachfield. Kids jumped up and down, broke it. Same as with Lockerman Bundy, Montebello, and then we had a playground fire over at Walter P. Carter. So we're replacing them. So most of this right now is risk, and where we pay the initial $5,000, and then the other ones that are under $5,000, we're going to absorb that in our operating budget.
Thank you.
The last contract this morning is a contract with Easter Lock and Security Solutions, Inc. The total amount of the contract for the initial 3-year term is $600,000, or approximately $200,000 a year. They provide locks, services, and solutions to the district. And that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And this is the end of our meeting. And by the way, have a great holiday to our staff and the presenters. Thank you. And our meeting is over right now, and the next meeting will be in this room, January the 15th, 2019. And updates will be CIP update, mid-year report, budget update, and technology update. And again, I want to thank everybody, our community, our listeners, our staff, and wish you all a happy holiday. Thank you very much.